former assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York, the very same district court as Bankman-Fried's. Andy, it's always great to see you and get your perspective on what's happening here. This has obviously been one of those stories that continues to develop, and we watch it very closely. I'll pose the same question to you. The $250 million in bail, that was staggering. Your thoughts on how they put this package together and some of the parameters that went with it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a sham, Jackie. I mean, you don't say that you have to have $250 million to avoid somebody from fleeing from the charges and then let him leave basically on a signature. I mean, I'm sure his parents have a very nice house in Palo Alto. I'm betting it's probably not worth anything close to $250 million. So I think they wanted to make a splash and say, you know, that they got a bail amount that was the biggest bail amount in the history of bail amounts. But, you know, the Bernie Madoff $10 million that you were talking about, that was a real actual $10 million.
Right.
You know, where he had to come up with collateral and things that they could execute on if he actually fled. Here, it's true that, like, anybody who signs that bond will be on the hook for the face amount of the bond, which is $250 million if he takes off. But do they really think that they can execute on anything close to $250 million based on that bond, where they haven't made anybody post property to speak of other than that house? I really don't think so.
Probably not. No, that's an excellent point. Meantime, I want to get your take on what you think about the co-founder, Gary Wang, and former CEO of Alameda Research, Caroline Ellison. They both pled guilty. And presumably they're flipping on Sam Bankman-Fried here. That's going to help make the government's case stronger. Your thoughts on how all of this plays out behind the scenes, because you know the intricacies of that and that negotiation that takes place.
Well, I think there's two very interesting things about it. One is just the normal thing when you get somebody who's an alleged accomplice to plead guilty, which is the government has gotten them to plead guilty to the same conspiracy charges that Sam Bankman-Fried is charged with. So if you're Bankman-Fried and you're thinking about going to trial, it becomes very difficult to get acquitted when people are going to take the stand and say they committed the crime that you're charged with and they committed it with you.
Right.
You know, it's not something that people do. And then the other thing I think that's interesting is, I think we may have talked about this last week. You know, there's in the law, there's some question about whether cryptocurrency is really a security for purposes of the securities laws and whether it's a commodity for purposes of that set of laws. I thought it was very interesting that they made both of the cooperators, Ellison and Wang, plead guilty to the securities conspiracy charge and the commodities conspiracy charge.
Both of them. Because
they are trying to, they're trying to lay the groundwork that there's no dispute here whatsoever that the government has the ability under the current laws that exist to regulate here.
Understood.
Now, that's not binding on Sam Bankman-Fried. If he wants to go to trial and he wants to challenge the legality of that, he can. Their guilty plea doesn't dispose of the issue as to him, but it's clear that they're trying to lay the groundwork that the current set of laws that we have completely regulate cryptocurrency.
I got to ask you about the border, but just one more question about this. He didn't enter a plea, so presumably now is the time that the government is going to be negotiating with his attorneys, and he gets to decide, does he plead guilty to a certain amount of charges? Maybe they can, you know, get him a little bit of a better deal than what he's being faced with now, or does he go to trial, which is very risky by all accounts. I've spoken to a lot of defense attorneys who say you never know what you're going to get at trial, because it's all up to the jury.
You know, the thing, Jackie, is you mentioned the Bernie Madoff case, and Connell did. Bernie Madoff got 150 years, you know, and the only reason I point that out is at a certain point, if they're not willing to do more than, you know, give you a break like 10 years or 15 years, if, you know, the break is you're looking at 30 or 40, even if the chance of success is unlikely, a lot of people say we might as well roll the dice and go to trial, because otherwise my life is over.
Right.
So, you know, that's what he's going to be confronted with. I guess if he gets in early and he agrees, like the other two accomplices have agreed, to dispose of the civil cases brought by the SEC and the Commodities Exchange Commission. Maybe that helps him, but it's a lot of money at stake, and the sentencing guidelines are going to be very high. We're talking about, over $1 billion.
I hear you.